Yes, it didn't start. Yes, now it did. Welcome to the second mentoring session of the Global Business Mentoring Hub for Startups virtual edition. This is the virtual edition of the project that Sterna International Business has delivered during the Web Summit event in Rio back in April this year, with 30 mentoring sessions on international expansion. We have selected the most popular sessions and created the virtual edition so that more people can benefit from all its knowledge. So welcome once more. I'm Julia Marcelino. I'm coordinator of the Global Mindset Academy, part of Sterna International Group. For those who do not know yet, Sterna is the first internationalization boutique in Brazil. It's a consulting company founded in 2018 that has a team of over 10 experts in different areas of international expansion. The Global Mindset Academy is the branch of Sterna that's responsible for developing the global mindset through mentoring, courses, deep dives, and master classes. And of course, it is an essential pillar for those who'd like to see their companies going global in a successful way. So we are happy to share these insights with you and hope you benefit from it at its full capacity. So in today's session, we will have our partner and international marketing specialist, Sara Zimmermann from Zimmermann Pro, to give us insights on how to create a global brand. With over 20 years of experience with national and international projects, Sara has served more than 100 clients, including fashion retailers, financial markets, and trade associations, and has trained over 3,000 students. If you have any questions during this mentoring session, please put them on the chat and we'll get to them later. So, Sara, stage is yours. Welcome.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here, and nice to meet you all. Let me share my screen just a minute. Can you please confirm you can see my screen? Yes, thank you, Julia. So today we're going to talk about how to create a global brand. Julia has already introduced me, so please feel welcome to look for me on LinkedIn or email if you have any further questions. And of course, please feel free to send your messages here on the chat, or once we finish the presentation, we're going to open for questions in general. Okay? So please enjoy. It's interesting to talk about how to create a global brand, since we are talking about, of course, an international opportunity for companies and an international opportunity for brands. At the same time, we need to think that we are reaching a lot of people, and with a lot of people, we are reaching a lot of different cultures. We are reaching different behaviors. We are reaching different um, day-to-day habits, and all of that can impact our strategy. So it's always a difficult choice to decide if your brand is going international or not, and if so, if you're going to make any changes to reach this international public, or if you're at the same time, there's always the possibility to work with regional brands or regional developments on the brand. Uh, this is a this is a very strategic decision, and it all the marketing professionals and branding professionals, they all should be part of the discussion, but also with the commercial team and also the analytics team. And it really depends on where the analytics team is inserted within the company. If you think about what's the short term, medium term, and long term strategies. Let's start here. So, if we're talking about an international brand, a global brand, it will deliver more consistency. You're going to reach more people with the same logo, with the same visual identity, with the same positioning. And once a person is impacted by your brand, once, twice, three times, four times, if possible, six times, the person will probably already remember your brand, your name, and what's your key message. If it's well, uh, if there's a good consistency here on the messaging. So it's easier, of course, to create a global positioning if we do have a global brand instead of very specific brands for very specific companies, countries. I'm sorry. Since work with a global brand, you do have the opportunity to create more consistency. Then one of the direct results is a bigger or increased customer awareness. You're not going to create any confusion inside your potential clients' minds, and they will or they shall understand, see your brand, see your positioning, see your offering as a brand and an offering that has been being presented for some time for this public, and they will recognize your brand, they will recognize what you stand for. It also impacts on your brand value. So, and even if we're talking about internationalization, it's always important. We are always talking about valuation. We are always talking about impact and results. And an increased brand value is something that adds to your brand and also to your financial results. One thing, so I'm talking about, I started here talking about the pros and a more qualitative group of pros on having global brand. Let's talk about quantitative results, or let's talk about finance. If you do work with a global brand, you are gonna uh, reduce marketing costs for sure. It's one visual identity, it's one main positioning, it's the same material, so you're going to reduce costs with designers, you're going to reduce costs with web design, internet, content, publishing, print. So it's a very important cost reduction and production and timing, which all impacts on increased profit. The increased profit comes from not only reducing costs, but also creating a bigger brand strategy and a bigger brand positioning, which will facilitate the path for your sales team or for your sales machine, if it's, for example, an online sales machine. Uh, this will all help you to get better results. From the strategic point of view or the leadership point of view, it also makes your lives easier. Thinking about you don't need to coordinate so many specific brands and then so many specific materials and so many specific people if you do have a brand that has international differentiations. For example, if you want to check further after this presentation, Kibon is a good case. If you look for Kibon, you're going to find a very similar logo, but different names, and then different teams and different languages worldwide. Imagine the effort. That's a big case on a brand that had trouble with international branding and international um, brand licenses around the world. But this happened to a company that has some decades of uh, history. If you're planning to go for an international, um, it's been a while that I don't speak English, so I'm making some pauses. Please, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. But if you have the opportunity to plan from the beginning, from scratch, that makes a big difference. Thinking about awareness, thinking about strategy, thinking about costs, and thinking about profits. As I've said in the beginning, we are suggesting that most projects continue with an international branding and literally using the same brand for all the opportunities you have, but there are exceptions for sure where it's important to make changes. Okay, so it's always about understanding the strategic positioning of the company and strategic pulverization. And thinking about that, there's a big challenge. I don't know if everyone here is from Brazil. I'm guessing because of the names. Gustavo, I'm not sure about you because of your last name, but I will proceed either way saying that if you think about Brazil, we have so many different cultures. Carolina, I'm thinking you're from Brazil as well. So I'm starting with a Brazilian example here. If you think about Brazil, there's so many cultures inside Brazil. So it's very, we know that if you're in São Paulo, you're going to consume different products from the Northeast and from the Northwest, from the North, from the South, etc. We could say that we have one or two Europes inside Brazil. And then if you go to North America, thinking about two main countries, if you're going to Europe, 10 plus countries, if you're going to Asia, 10 plus countries, etc., you are going to reach different cultures. And one of the key aspects on marketing is that all of your marketing strategy needs to focus on your consumer or your client's behavior. So you need to understand very well who your persona is so you can develop all of these strategies. Well, this becomes a challenge if you think about a global brand. So even if you are going global and you're gonna say to me, I want to be everywhere, all continents, all countries, etc., etc. I'm gonna have to ask you, okay, but please decide one, two, three main countries for your initial positioning. So please take a note on that because that's very important. Even if you're talking about going global, you are probably reaching in the beginning for one, two, three key areas of the globe. And it impacts all of your strategy, right? Your sales strategy, your finance strategy, your logistics strategy. So why not your brand strategy? Because if you're going to create a brand positioning, thinking about one country or thinking about going global, you still need to make adjustments regarding the culture. So know your main focus so you can know the main cultures or the first one, two, three cultures you are going to reach. Creating a strategy to be well positioned in Asia is different than creating a strategy to be well positioned in North America. If we think about India slash the USA, that's a big difference here, a big shift of culture. And you should, yes, you should make some changes or some alignments regarding the main culture or the main cultures you are going to reach. It's normal for countries that with time they make changes and with time they develop to reach other countries. If you, it's easier to say so if you are, for example, a finance company. If you work in finance, it's easier to be not so humane. Today everything is about humans, right? So we need to humanize all of our communications if possible. But if you're talking about tech or if you're talking about finance, you can take one step back and not be so particular about culture. If you're but if you are in retail, for example, if you are in education and some other segments, you are going to make shifts. So know your main cultures that you want to reach, because knowing the main cultures you want to reach, you are going to review your value proposition. Reviewing developer position is one key aspect of internationalization because especially if well, once we are leaving from one country to another country, it's a different culture, different point of view, and different stages of development on each segments, and because of that, different demands. Since your value proposition is what makes you different, it's what makes you, if possible, unique, or at least being different, desirable. Being desirable in India is different than being desirable in the USA. So check culture, and then after that, check, review the value proposition of your brand, and finally, review your positioning. And now we are talking about the brand. The positioning is how everyone sees you, your company, and your brand. And if you have the opportunity, if you're thinking about internationalization, you have the chance to plan your positioning. So ideally, you're going to plan uh, who is going to see you and what, how you'd like to be seen by these people, by this group, by this country. That's a key aspect. Of course, we plan the positioning and then we execute, and then you have to monitor every 6 months, every 12 months, because the real positioning is not what how you want to be seen, but it's how you are actually seen by everyone. But since you are planning, you get the chance to plan the positioning, and it's very important to say that it all goes back to culture, and all goes back to, okay, which countries you want to reach first. Okay, that's really important here. Um, and then let's talk about reaching people, creating this global brand. Because if you think about the brand itself, some people are going to think, oh, she's only talking about the logo, she's only talking about the visual identity. And no, I'm talking about the positioning of your brand, so people can recognize your brand, people can be open to your brand when these people find your product in the supermarket, or when these people uh, when someone from your company messages them on LinkedIn, and etc., etc. So we need to find the right channels. So if you're thinking about global branding, we need to take one step back with the marketing group and understand, once you know who your persona are, you need to understand what's the buyer journey of this persona. You need to map it. So, for example, here we have an example of a buyer journey that includes awareness, evaluation, purchase, usage, repurchase, and advocacy. That's mostly what we see in the market nowadays, but of course, any buyer journey can be changed because we're literally mapping the reality of our customers. If, for example, you are in a B2B company, you might have different stages here between awareness, evaluation, and purchase. X meetings, X emails, etc., etc. Well, once you map not only the stages, see here that I have the channels outlined. This is how you're going to decide on which channels you're going to present your brand. And this is how even you're going to decide which materials you need to present your brand. So probably you're going to have to go digital. I'm going to say that with 99.9% of certainty here. But website, yes, no, and what experience, because it really depends on the culture. Social media, yes or no, probably yes. Which ones? It really depends on the culture. Email, yes or no. Ads, yes or no. If you're going to talk about content, which format? That's a big thing here as well. Of course, we can go with international trends. For example, video is more important today than it creates more engagement for sure than text and images, but images are very important. You're talking about a brand a lot, so you're talking about the visual elements of your brand. If you're going international and you have a big or important leadership, you can also explore the leadership related to your brand. For example, Raquel. Everyone here knows Raquel, right? Raquel Kibrit. It's impossible to separate Sterna from Raquel. You can also work with the brand positioning of the founder as well, or the CEO or the executives. So you need to understand which channels you're gonna work with your brand. And well, many people think that quantity is more important than quality. I'm gonna say here, quality is more important than quantity. So the idea here is to really understand the main channels, because probably if you're going international, you don't have all the budget in the world. You're gonna have a scarcity of budget. So you need to plan strategically on how you're going to reach people and where, from which channels, etc. Digital probably is going to be cheaper than print offline, but sometimes offline is as important as digital. It really depends on the market here, on the segment. So we're talking about understanding the pros of the branding, the international brand, and which channels you're going to use and the strategy behind it. Remembering that on is important, but off as well. So um, think yes about international experiences, and remember culture, culture, culture. The way we make business in Brazil is different from the way we make business in the UK, is different from the way we make business in Spain, and etc., etc. So the materials you're going to use to present your brand are going to be different in between these countries, and you need to choose the key aspects, the key channels, and the key forms of presentation of your brand. Another thing that it's important as well is that your brand is going to be represented not only on the marketing materials, but a lot, mostly on your team. So if you do have a sales team, if you do have relationship people, I don't know what are the jobs here, the job descriptions, etc., etc. But in a world where technology is leading, artificial intelligence is leading, we are going back to our roots of needing contact with humans, and all humans that represent your brand, being this representation online or offline. It can be here, for example, as a webinar. It can be on your LinkedIn profile. It can be on your day-to-day relationship, going to events in Russia. I don't know. Um, your team should be trained. So you need to think, of course, on the visual aspects, branding, probably the person, does this person has a business card, does this person has a LinkedIn profile, is this person going to wear the logo on his clothes or not, but also the behavior, also on how to present the brand on the pitch, and on the networking best practices that you should train your team. We are not only talking about visual aspects, we are talking about creating a positioning. And to create a positioning, we are talking about all the points of contact with the brand. It goes for your marketing efforts, on your attraction, conversion, and sale aspects, but it also goes on the branding experience with your product or service. It also goes on the branding experience with your team, on the post-sale experience, with the pre-sales experience, and everything else. Okay, so you're talking about team, culture, sales, leadership, HR, and not only marketing materials. One key aspect here that's really important to talk about is the naming. I could go here for hours, right? This could be a course of 4 or 8 hours. We're talking here about the key aspects. And I'm not going to tell you how to create a brand, how to hire a designer, etc., etc. We can talk about this later. I'm talking about the strategic points here, and naming is the biggest challenge here from the marketing perspective. There's a second big perspective that it's from the legal point of view, is how you register your brand so you can use it. Which, by the way, if you go back to Kibon, it was their main challenge. They could not use Kibon, or it's not Kibon, but the original naming. They could not go worldwide, so they started creating different names for different countries. But before we go to the legal aspects, we need to go to the naming. People choose your name thinking about going global. When I created my company, it was really interesting because I am a specialist at Sterna. I have my own company, Zimmermann Pro, which is my last name, and I had a challenge. I wanted to create a name that, since I knew I was going global, I wanted to create a name that could be recognized, could be well understood, could be pronounced in Portuguese, English, and Spanish. That was my main goal in the beginning, and I did it. I chose a name. I got all the profiles on the web I needed, websites, social media, etc., etc. And then I had a problem with legal. Not a problem, but I saw that I would have problems um, guaranteeing that brand in legal terms. So then I had to change. And in the end, I literally gave up and went with Zimmermann, which is my last name. Sterna went through the same naming process. In the beginning, and I was there, we decided to choose an international name that could be pronounced in several languages, could be understood in several languages, and we could go to a more English name, if you can say so. It's Sterna, you can pronounce in Portuguese, that's fine. But when you explain what Sterna means, that's a bird, and the name is in English. So it was here a challenge. You can hire someone; they're experts around the world. We can do it for as well for you guys. But I can say that this is a step that you can do for yourself. You can you literally have a dictionary on your hand, and you start deciding on a naming that works in the different cultures or the main cultures you want to reach. And of course, and then you're going to think about appropriation. You're going to think about what it means, because sometimes people can express, they can pronounce, but the translation not so good in the following countries. You're going to go further. So that's a key aspects here, naming. Once you secure the name, you need to secure legal. You need to register the brand. And if I'm not mistaken, we also are going to have a mentoring session regarding that. But if you're not talking to a Sterna team, because we do have a specialist who has these mentoring sessions on Web Summit as well at Web Summit, and also secure the name for URLs, websites, and social media. Okay. Uh, Checklist for you on the name. Is the name easy to pronounce in other languages? What connotations does the name have in your target cultures? Thinking about SEO, it's more specific here on the digital media world, but search engine optimization. So, how people are going to write down your name. Is it an easy name to pronounce? So, for example, my Zimmermann, people, it's very difficult to pronounce Zimmermann, right? Imagine if I tell you, do not read my name here, but look for me online and write zimmermannpro.com.br. You're going crazy. You're not going to find it. So when I decided by Zimmermann Pro, for example, I went for Zipro for my website. I went for Zipro on my email because, and I have the brand registration for Zipro as well, because I understood it would make my customer's life easier regarding the SEO landscape, which means they would find me on Google and social media in an easier way. And then trademark and intellectual property. Check with that. Do not go and do not work on international strategy. Do not go international with all the effort that it's involved and all the investment that it's involved without securing trademark and intellectual property. In Brazil, our life is easier regarding trademark and intellectual property. Worldwide, depending on the country you're reaching, you might have troubles. And it's so easy today. It's easier than it was for me 15 years ago, 12 years ago, when I did it for my country, for my company, okay? It's easier. Take this step. Do not create such an effort to go international and then have a crisis 2 years, 3 years after this internationalization, because someone else is using your brand and they're gonna charge you 20, 100K dollars for your brand, then you're gonna give up. Okay. Steps for creating an international brand. So I know this is the key aspect you'd like to see. So once you decide, once you decide the strategy, once you review this culture slash value proposition slash positioning, which is very important, once you decide the naming, okay, steps to be secured. Step number one, guarantee you're having the same positioning worldwide. We have already talked about it. Step number two, get access to the global village. So you have probably already decided which are the main countries, but then go to the main or the most important social media or channels that are going to talk about your company, but also channels where your segment uh, gets more attraction around the globe. Step number three, which is very important, create brand guidelines. Uh, People, it's a carnival out there. If you do not create your guidelines, every marketing person, and then you start growing, and then you're going to have a team in Spain and a team in India. I'm going with these examples today. And people, they make so many changes. So be strict because you are putting so much effort and money effort on creating a global brand. that it's important for people to use the key elements, the key voice, tone, etc., regarding your persona, regarding your strategies. Sometimes, and I'm sure, if I'm not mistaken, I've used here, sometimes some adaptations are necessary, and that's fine. But if you don't secure the guidelines and if you don't secure the monitoring of the guidelines, you are probably 95% of chances that you are going to have trouble. And if you do not have trouble, you're going to make your brand, all it, well, all of your branding, global branding strategy is going to get weak and weaker and weaker and weaker because people are not working on creating a strong messaging and a strong positioning. One very important aspect today on the experience and presentation of brands worldwide. Well, we know that we have been talking about sustainability for at least 10 years, and we have now the flow of ESG. I'm finding a lot of MBAs and post-graduation courses and specializations, etc., etc. We are in Brazil. I don't know if you know, but that's even stronger in Europe, and not so that big, much stronger, but in the USA as well. So telling, working on the storytelling of your brand, but at the same time presenting what's the social responsibility of your brand and your company. That's a branding aspect that you could work, and it will increase the brand value. Okay. And then work on launches on international calendar. That's very important. In the beginning, Julia was saying, "Oh, you're from." Someone said, "Oh, it's evening, it's early morning, etc., etc." So I'm guessing you are around the globe here. And once you have a launch, it becomes a challenge. What time to launch, when to launch, which day to launch. And we're not only talking about time zone, we're talking about which day, we're talking about holidays, we're talking about religious pauses around the globe, etc., etc. So it becomes a challenge to create an international calendar. It takes time, and a suggestion here is that you take a good look on creating all the line launches, product, communication, campaigns, etc., etc. And finally, then once you create the global campaigns, as I've said, it's normal to make small changes, thinking about specific regions. Once you have the global brand created or scratched at least, you can start working, yes, in a small regional campaigns. I'm not talking about changing the logo. I'm not changing from 1 to 80 your positioning, but why not creating cultural difference that could make a change or could make sense? If I'm going back to India once again, thinking about McDonald's. McDonald's creates different product experiences depending on the country and the region. We do not have the same meat in Brazil as we have in India, right? And we can, yes, work on regional aspects. Regional aspects will help us to decide channels on presenting our brand. Regional aspects will give us insights on what's the best call to action, what's the best engagement strategy, what's the best influencer strategy, and how we should talk to people. Okay, so regional campaigns are totally okay, but that's if you see here, I'm suggesting it to be our sixth step, which means work first on your homework to create the global brand with all the key aspects we have been talking about. Create the guidelines, explore best practices around the world as a global unit. And then since you have worked on steps 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, then start exploring regional campaigns. One big mistake companies do here is one, they decide to go global. Two, they decide to have a global brand. Three, 3 months later, they are anxious and they change their strategy. We are talking about a medium and long-term strategy here, right? So we need to understand the roadmap we have decided to follow. So this is one of the biggest mistakes brands do, companies do regarding the brand. They change the strategy every 3 months, every 4 months, and after 1.5 years, 2.5 years, 5 years sometimes, they get tired because they have not reached their results. Most of that, they have been making changes on the strategy, on the marketing, on the sales, but mostly on the positioning of the brand, and it will impact the results. Okay, so we do not do this from one day to the other. It's not something that we the strategy is not something that we do in 24 hours. It's something that you need to plan, you need to check, you need to study the public, you need to study the channels, you need to study the naming, you need to create the guidelines, you need to study the best practice to reach this public around the world, and really trust the process and really trust the strategy you have developed. Okay, I hope you have enjoyed talking about the strategic part on creating a global brand. And I'm thinking Julia might say a few words and then we are going to open for questions. Thank you so much. And if you do have any questions, if you'd like to have any follow up, 30 minutes is so little. So please feel free to reach me so we can continue the conversation. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Sarah, for this very insightful presentation. I'm pretty sure and hope that everyone learned a lot. Um, does anyone have any questions for Sarah? Feel free to open your microphone if you'd like, or just post your questions on our chat. Is Sarah still here? I thought she left. Hmm. Well, if you do, she might have had a problem with. Oh, there she is. There she is. Hmm. So, does anyone have any questions? I would really like to know, Sarah. You're back, right?
Yeah. Can you
Hi.
hear me?
Yeah. I would like to know how long does it take to actually develop a strategy? What does it depend on?
Hmm. Julia, one key aspect, if we're talking about creating a global brand, is one step of the marketing plan, right?
Mm.
And to start the marketing plan, thinking about branding, but also thinking about marketing and sales and etc., we do have some steps before that needs to be checked. So you need to know what's the background of the company. You need to know what the products are going to be. You need to know what's the suggestion, at least the suggestion of the value proposition, positioning, and etc. If you don't have it, the suggestion for going global, at least knowing where you're coming from, so understanding the value proposition on the first country. And you need to know what are the main countries you're going to reach. If you know the main countries you're going to reach or the first steps of countries you're going to reach and the profile of the public, then marketing can start playing with the information. Uh, if you work full time on a strategy, the strategy itself could be prepared in 2, 3/4 weeks. So it says. And then if you are going to hire a design team to work with the branding itself, it could take 2 to 4 weeks. So you're talking about a process. It really depends on which stages are going to be inserted in this process. 2 to 8 weeks.
Yep.
Which, if you're going global and you're working on a 360 degrees strategy, it can be something that you work um, both sides. So you can work in marketing while someone is working in finance and someone's working in legal. So thinking about a timesheet, um, it can be something parallel.
And what is the safe planning amount of time to actually consolidate your brand in a
Mm,
country?
there's no right answer for that because it really depends on the investment you're going to have.
Mm.
For example, if you do have a lot of cash flow and you really want to be aggressive, you could do a good work in 2, 3, 4 months. Mostly because you can work with a lot of influencers and you can work with events, experiences, and ads. If you're going organically, it can take maybe 1 year, 2 years, 5 years. It really depends on how aggressive you are, what's the budget, what's your goal. Um, so it's a very difficult answer, Julia.
Mhm.
And sometimes you go global with one person and one website. Sometimes you go global with X franchises and X stores and X sales representatives. So it really depends.
And it might depend on the size of the company and on not only the budget. I mean, um,
Yes, yes. But one thing that's really important here is that it takes someone a median of an average, not a median, an average of 6 times um, in contact with your brand. Remember your brand. So we are talking about a medium/long-term strategy here.
I
I
see.
see we have a question from Alexandre. What is the best marketing strategy on social media? So should I create new accounts based on the language of the countries where I'm spending my business or create accounts for each country? Alexandre, curiosity here. It's difficult to talk about branding and not social media. But then I'm going to tell you, we have a different mentoring session only about global social media. um, but of course, answering you here. Um, one global or one main social media, and if possible, and if you have the time, effort, etc., etc., the specific for each country or at least for each language. So some international companies, for example, which is not the best option here, but I have a client today that the profiles for Spanish focus on Spain and some countries even in um, Latin America. And I have another client that works with Portuguese for Brazil and Portugal at the same time. Best option, have one specific for each country. Is it possible? Can you manage? Can you guarantee the brand guidelines to be followed? Can you guarantee the tone of voice? Can you? So if you are a multinational, for sure, I'm going to say have one account for each country. If you don't have this team, if you don't have this investment, sometimes creating working on a good strategy on one main account, it could have a good result. And today on social media, for example, Instagram, we do have the ability to, if you don't have, for example, for any post, if you don't have um, a, a very big, a very extensive text following an image, for example, some brands are creating content in more than one country for the same post, in more than one language. So you can work on an image, for example, and develop content, for example, in English and Portuguese on the same post. It's not ideal. We have the ideal and we have what's possible. Um, we might, for example, an Italian will not like to see English on the same post. Uh, Everything is about pros and cons and what's your investment, time, team, and money to reach so. Different accounts, ideal. Most of times, let's go slowly here and test for the country. One thing that I can say is if you're creating a different account for 1 or 2 countries and you are in 5, create the 5. You might have problems with your public, with your team, with the country. Does that answer your question, Alexandre? Perfect. Um, I always like to talk about the ideal slash the possible because we're talking about a lot of investment here and not necessarily money, but time and if you're going global, you're thinking about investment of time in so many different areas that sometimes starting smaller, and which usually is our suggestion here from Sterna. We start smaller and then we keep validating all the strategy. That's even a strategy of growth hacking or growth marketing. We validate, we go a little further. We validate, we go a little further. We validate. So that's my strategy always. Start small and expand. You're welcome. Julia, any other questions?
Does anyone have any other questions? I do have many. I could be here for hours.
Thank you, Lismaid and Lucia, for having a camera. It's really nice to see you guys. Um, well, you do have my email, which is sara@cipro.com.br. And please feel free to reach me on LinkedIn and emails, etc., etc. Think about what we have talked here, and please follow up. I'll be happy to answer. Julia, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sarah. Once again, doesn't hurt to remind everyone that, um, well, to go global, not only adapt your mindset, but also your brand is a vital step to it. We would like to, well, actually invite you to the next mentoring session we're going to have on August 28th at 12 p.m. Brazil time with Sterna CEO and founder Raquel Kibrit on how to actually prepare your startup to go global. I will post the link here for the startup, for the, sorry, the mentoring session if you would like to subscribe and come join Raquel to learn the key elements to prepare internally for you to go global. We would also like to invite you to our course that is called Global Business for Founders. We're going to have it on August 19th at Cubo Itaú from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. That is a course, we're on the 8th edition. We have prepared 100, more than 100 professionals from 30 countries, and that will actually give you all the steps for uh, planning your strategy to go global, starting from the market analysis until the actual structuring of your project operation. So if you would like to know more about the course, I will give you the link in a few seconds. And also, if you would like to know more about this course, I will ask Daniel to put his contact information on the chat, and you can contact him if you would like more information on this course. We would like to thank everyone for coming. Hope you have enjoyed this mentoring. Thank you, Sarah, once again for your partnership and for the great presentation. And hope you guys have a great rest of the week. See you in the world.
Bye bye, everyone.